In 1969, an Omega watch landed on the moon, and Rolex. So how did Rolex become the king of luxury watches? In 1965, NASA realized something very critical. Astronauts need a mechanical watch they can rely on if all electronics fail. If systems die in space, a mechanical watch can save your life. Later, NASA did not inform any of the watch brands that they planned to do a torture test to see if they were fit to endure the moon. They tested Rolex, Longines, and Omega chronograph watches. They each were put through 160 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures for hours, negative 40 degrees of cold, massive shock tests, extreme vibration, vacuum tests, 95% humidity for days, and 7.25 Gs of acceleration. Basically, they tried to destroy them, and Omega Speedmaster passed every test and stayed accurate, while the rest failed on shock or high humidity. The Omega Speedmaster became the official watch of NASA, still to this day. But Omega was also the chosen watch for the Olympics in 1932. The Olympics had no reliable, precise way to time races. They tried over 30 ultra-precise chronographs, all calibrated and synchronized. But at the end, Omega was named the world's first official Olympic timekeeper. For the first time in history, every event was timed with the same standard, and results were trusted worldwide. Known as the most accurate Swiss watchmaker, Omega dominated precision competitions. Rolex was more focused on marketing, waterproof cases. The Olympics chose precision. Before Rolex was a status symbol, Omega was a tool watch brand trusted by armies. During World War I and World War II, militaries needed watches that were extremely reliable, mass-producible, accurate, and easy to repair. And Omega was more than jewelry, they were mission-critical instruments. Omega won the military contracts because of their ability to produce hundreds of thousands of identical watches and proven chronometer accuracy. Rolex at the time was not optimized for mass military supply, so they made far fewer watches and focused more on civilian and officer purchases. And what it would seem thus far is Omega is winning by a landslide as far as better functions and worldwide recognition. But watch how this story unfolds. Omega went on to supply over 110,000 watches to the British military alone in World War II. Classified as official military equipment, Rolex couldn't compete at that level of supply or standardization then, but stayed focused on being a luxury brand. By logic, Omega should have won the luxury war, being the Olympics' chosen watch, Speedmaster's moon landing, and all-around proven chronometer accuracy. But Omega's overproduction wasn't the result of one decision. It was a long-term strategic pattern rooted in how the brand thought it should grow as a luxury watchmaker. In the 1990s and 2000s, Omega expanded its catalog dramatically. Speedmaster had dozens of sub-references, finishes, materials. Seamaster expanded into multiple sizes, bezels, dials, and special editions. Constellation and DeVille also ballooned with splits by gender, color, size, and etc. This wasn't just a few options, it was hundreds of SKU variations released year after year. Whereas Rolex has 30 core models, updated slowly over decades. Omega released many times that across subdivisions. Reports estimated that by the late 2010s, Omega was producing several 100,000 watches per year. Some estimates put it close to 500,000 plus units annually. Meanwhile, Rolex was producing roughly 800,000 to 1 million watches annually, but with much higher sell-through and wait lists. So while Omega didn't necessarily outproduce Rolex outright, its distribution and availability were much broader because Omega watches were everywhere, even in outlets and discount channels. But when luxury becomes accessible, it becomes ordinary. And many of those watches hit the secondary market quickly. Industry analysts show Omega had double-digit discounting across authorized dealers in many markets, often 20 to 40% off retail, where Rolex understood the concept of prestige is not negotiable. If a Rolex is discounted, it's rare and usually unauthorized. Omega's strategy wasn't a bad idea. They wanted to compete with Rolex by being more affordable while technically advanced. Instead of playing scarcity, Omega played penetration. Be everywhere and be the obvious choice for collectors. Omega thought better tech equals more desirability. But status buyers don't care about tech. They care about perceived rarity and status signaling. Rolex kept supply controlled, so dealers never discount and always create wait lists. The rule, perception of availability, luxury equals rarity. When everyone can have one, it stops being prestige. When dealers discount, it signals not that special. Rolex has clear pillars when it comes to watches. Submariner a dive icon, Daytona racing legend, and GMT a travel icon. Omega has dozens of Speedmaster versions and too many special editions. This creates choice fatigue instead of brand focus. This is why, in the secondary market, an Omega usually sells below retail and a Rolex often sells above retail. When Rolex realized something most luxury brands never understand, luxury is not about being better, it's about being harder to get. They built their entire strategy around desire, not specs. They used the waiting list as a psychological weapon, making sure to control supply to authorized dealers and ship less than the demand. This created waiting lists, empty cases, and the hard feeling of, you're not important enough. Yet. The human brain values what it must wait for more than what it can buy instantly, and Rolex had a firm understanding of that. They keep the supply tight and let the secondary market explode, and the prices rise above retail. Rolex makes around 1 million watches a year, but the demand is higher than that. And if you want to know why Rolex keeps using the same designs for 40 to 60 years, they knew. If you keep changing the design, you weaken the icon. By barely changing anything, every Rolex always looks correct. New ones look instantly familiar, and old ones don't look outdated. By not focusing on specs and features, they built legend status. So is Omega the worst timepiece? Technically, by engineering standards, Omega is at least equal, and in many ways superior to Rolex. With a more advanced coaxial, extremely strong magnetism, 15,000 Gauss, they also have a METAS certification. They're backed with a uniquely strong history, from landing on the moon to being the watch of choice for the Olympics and military. Some would say Omega is the better functioning watch, but that's just it. They became the rational choice, and over-availability lost emotional status position. When you buy a Rolex, it feels earned, scarce, and powerful. They became the status symbol. They won the desire game. Omega didn't lose on quality. They lost on exclusivity. Omega made watches for engineers. Rolex made watches for kings. If you want more stories about how power, status, and brands really work, subscribe. Because the real luxury game isn't about products. It's about perception.